Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So, this is going to be quite the shift from talking about Snake Eye a lot recently as far as, general deck game plans go, but rather than a graveyard-based combo deck, we're going to be talking about going second to Kashtira, a very much banish-based control deck. So I talked actually a little bit about this in my tournament report yesterday. Going second Kashtira is a deck I've been wanting to work on ever since I decided to bring it for the best of 3 rounds in the Challenger Cup. For those who don't know, in the Challenger Cup, the tournament series that Konami is officially putting on in the United States right now for Master Duel, and they have been doing it in Europe as well for quite some time now. You can actually not only switch decks between rounds, you can also do it between games when you're in Top Cut for best of 3. So again, as I talked about yesterday in my video, I decided to bring a going second Kashtira build for the best of 3 games in which I would, well, of course, be going second, right? And the build that I had for the tournament was like pretty thrown together a little bit last minute, so I wanted to really work on it and test the build a little bit for future tournament matches moving forward. So here, this build already looks a little bit different than the one I had yesterday, right? I think the main difference is I'm not on Gamma Seal and maybe some other very slight changes, but this is actually not too different from a kind of regular Kashtira deck. I think the main things I'm doing here that I would not be doing in a regular Kashtira deck is, one, Effect Veilers. Because this card does have to be sent to the graveyard, it does actually conflict with stuff like Shifter and a Rise Heart. But because we're going second build, we're not going to have a Rise Heart out on turn 1. Actually, fun fact, all the games we're going to see here for the replays, all the games that I won during actually all the games I played, period, not just the games I won, during my playtesting session with this, I did not summon a Rise Heart a single time. And I still almost ranked up in Master. I went back and forth between Master 5 and 4 and came to my rank up match a couple of times, but lost both of them. But I had a pretty good record, honestly, for not summoning a Rise Heart at all. So even though this is a Kashtira deck, we're not really even focused on a Rise Heart, mostly because we are a going second deck. So Veiler is one of those going second cards that we're playing that we wouldn't normally play because it does have to go to the graveyard. And indeed, it does kind of conflict with Shifter if you open with both, but not any more so than like Max C does a lot of the time. Well, I mean, to be fair, you can chain Max C to Shifter, but you can't really chain Veiler to Shifter a lot of the time unless you hold the Shifter, which I do think is actually correct a lot of the time. I see a lot of people shotgunning, well, let's start with Max C. I see a lot of people shotgunning Max C in this format as a means, I assume, to get draws off of your opponent's Diabell or Kashtira monsters before they summon themselves to the field, which are both relatively common in this meta. But I think a lot of the time it's better to hold Max C for the same reason I like holding Shifter a lot of the time, which is honestly, well, there's a few minor reasons to do it, right? The main reason I like holding on to these kind of hand traps that you can activate whenever Max C and Shifter, well, Shifter as long as you have no cards in the graveyard, of course, but I mainly like holding on to them because it makes your opponent use their resources before they know what they're up against. And that's actually kind of 2 reasons rolled into 1, right? Like, let's say, you've got a pretty typical setup where your opponent is... your opponent goes into their turn, and their first action is to send a card, special the Diabell, and then set the original sin, right? Now, in the case of both Max C and Shifter, you would think, oh, I wish I would have had this card active before. That way, in the case of Max C, I could have gotten a draw off Diabell, or in the case of Shifter, they couldn't have summoned Diabell at all. However, in both cases, I'm actually fine waiting, right? With Shifter, I would wait until the effect of Diabell has resolved, but before they activate Original Sin, because if you do it then, they won't be able to flip up their Original Sin, and they'll have already summoned their Diabell from their hand, so now they're down a couple of cards in hand, and they can't use Diabell for follow-up, nor can they use whatever card they sent in order to summon Diabell. With Max C, I would wait until they flip up and activate Original Sin, then chain Max C. Similarly to the Shifter, you've now committed them to the resources. With Max C, you get to guarantee a draw, because if you Max C during the draw phase, even if your opponent has Diabell, there's a good chance they probably won't play it. The other thing too is that if you shotgun these cards during the draw phase, you're giving your opponent so much information about like how the return is going to play out, right? Like if you can do one of these in the middle of your opponent's play, it'll definitely cause them to have to like really reevaluate mid-play if they're going to continue their turn or not, at which point they might feel committed. But if you shotgun these during the draw phase, they might just be like, okay, so I'll just set a couple of cards and pass, right? And that can definitely be the difference. And particularly with the case of Shifter 2, there's also the minor benefit of you could potentially chain this to an effect that like sends a card from the hand or deck or whatever to the graveyard, and then get that card banished instead. So, let's see, other cards. Geez, I feel like I'm all over the place with this right now. So I had Valor as an example of a card that I wouldn't normally play in Kashtira that I am in this build because it's specifically going second. Second Nibiru is an example of that. Honestly, in Best of 1 in Master Duel, because we have Maxi, I generally don't like playing more than one Nibiru pretty much ever, but if I'm in a specifically going second deck, I'll play a second copy to maybe open it a little bit more often, or just to have like another hand trap in general to open a little bit more often. I still see people every now and then saying that, oh, but Nib isn't good in this format. It is. Nib is very good in this format. Nib is very good against Snake Eye. You just have to have good timing of when you use it. You can't just use it on the 5th summon, right? You gotta wait until, ideally, they've activated at least the Flambridge's graveyard effect to summon stuff from the graveyard, but... So yeah, second Nibiru I would not normally be playing, but I am because this is a going second build. Harpy's Feather Duster I normally wouldn't be playing, but this is a going second build. And then of course Evenlies. So really it's not too many cards. And it's mainly just going to be, again, the Valors, the Duster, the second Nib, and then the Evenlies. Duster, again, I'm just really not a fan of making this card in Best of 1. In general, it's like... You know, you might think, oh, but what if you play against Stun? It's like, okay, so if you go second against Stun, if they open the hand traps, then if you draw your one of Duster, then it's good, right? But, like, you know, that's so many ifs. Like, even just matching against Stun is a pretty big if. It's not that common of a matchup, especially in tournaments. But for Evenly, well, I guess it's in tournaments a fair amount, too, to be fair. But Evenly is, like, yeah, I would definitely not at all be playing this card if I wasn't on a specifically going second build. I don't think this card is good if you plan to go first. Like, honestly, even in this deck, there have been a lot of times where Evenly is just not that great for me, because I want to be using my battle phase in order to be able to either advance my own board state or out their board, usually outing their board with like Fenrir's effect or maybe going into a Zeus or something. So like, giving up your battle phase is a bigger ask than it might seem, because it's also going to guarantee that your opponent sees another turn, right? So, especially if you're playing, like, a combo deck, like Manatium or something, I don't think Evenly is correct ever in a deck like that, because, like, I mean, yeah, you could Evenly and then do your turn 1 combo, but again, you're giving your opponent another turn to be able to come back, right? And then, of course, beyond that, there's just also the fact that this card is literally only good going second. If you open this card going first, you are extremely sad, and it's, I mean, it's not unplayable, but it's very much likely to not be useful at all, so... Extra deck isn't really doing anything different from a regular Kashtira deck. I mean, this overall is not that different from a regular Kashtira deck. I think Valor is honestly the biggest difference here, just because, again, this card has to go to the graveyard, and to going first build, where I'm expected to try to summon a Rise Heart as often as possible, would never ever want this. To be fair, there is an argument to not play Valor here anyway, because it still does conflict with your banishing effects, and... I don't know, I have had games where I have both Valor and Shifter, and I Shifter, and then it's like, oh, the Valor's dead. But again, this is a control deck. The game's going to go on for multiple turns, so Valor will be alive eventually. But if you did not want to play Valor, you could definitely play, like, Gamma instead. I think that would be a fine substitute. I almost played Gamma, but decided to play, not even Valor's, it was some other cards. I think the second Nib, the Duster, and something else instead. But... let's break this list down card by card, and then we'll see the games for this video. So we're on 3 Effect Valor, 3 Maxi, 3 Ash Blossom of Joyous Spring, 2 Planet Pathfinder, 3 Kashtira Rise Heart, 2 Dimension Shifter, 1 Kashtira Fenrir, 3 Kashtira Unicorn, 1 Kashtira Ogre, 1 Scareclaw Kashtira, 1 Tearlaments Kashtira, 3 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 3 Kashtira Theosis, 1 Kashtira, 1 Pressured Planet Right South, 1 Kashtira Birth, 3 Evenly Matched, 3 Infinite Permanents, 1 Kashtira Big Bang, and then 1 Kashtira Preparations. And that's going to do it for the main deck. For the extra, we're on 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 number 11 Big Eye, 1 Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger, 1 Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, 1 number 28 Titanic Moth, 1 Dark Armed the Dragon of Annihilation, 1 Infinitrek Mountain Smasher, 3 Kashtira Shangri-Ira, 2 Kashtira Rise Heart, 1 Divine Arsenal Zeus Sky Thunder, 1 Infinitrek Goliath, and then 1 Donner Dagger for hire. And that is it for our list. Let's see those duels now. Alright, our first opponent's going to be on Tearlament. I faced a lot of Tearlament while playing this deck, which definitely made it feel a little bit like bullying, because this is a pretty good matchup for me. Of course, with shifters and just being on cash in general. Speaking of shifter, open it up with Maxi, Evenly, Nib, and Ogre here. Opponent's going to lead with the Rhoda to add the Rhino Heart. So immediately I'm faced with the decision of what I want to do here, and I decided I'm just going to shift in response to the Rhino Heart effect. This is a textbook wait for shifter moment. This is exactly the kind of ideal scenario. This is not a common scenario, mind you, but this is an ideal scenario. They end up having to banish one of their Shirens. It's so good. Second Max C is a little If I had known I'd drawn another Max C, I think I would have definitely used that last turn. But here I'm just going to use Ogre to grab the prep. Opponent's got a Super Poly. Unfortunately, the Ogre does happen to be water, so that means they are going to get to fuse for the Mud Dragon here. Super Poly ended up banishing, or discarding, Keldo, which banished because of Shifter. So Ogre's still going to resolve here. And let's see, it was Solic, then Grief, then... unfortunately I don't remember the rest after that, but I'm going to ultimately end up taking the Rhino Heart here. They can top deck a Solic if they would like to. They definitely don't have any Tearlaments cards or access to them right now, so that's totally fine with me. Yep, they're drawing the Solic. I'm going to flip Preparations and activate during the draw phase, but unfortunately for me, they do end up having a Maxi. This means that they are going to get to draw into the Grief, which means they will have some amount of plays here. But I also have Maxi, so I'm not the most worried in the world. And I'm actually going to Maxi as soon as they normal summon the Performade Trick Clown, because I know they're going to go into the Time Thief Redoer anyway, right? Actually, not the Redoer, but Dugaris. A rank 4 either way. So they're going to do Dugaris, try to draw 2, discard 1. I'm definitely going to Veiler this, 100%. Gonna make them have another answer here, which again, I know they have Grief. I actually know their hand is Grief Soliac right now, so... Trick Clown does get to bring itself back, but thankfully we are gonna get draws off of Maxi as a result. Grief to add and then send the Rhino Heart, which gets to summon itself, because again, we know the card in hand is Soliac, so they get to both add and send. I am gonna end up using... Oh no, sorry, that's a different game. I thought of a different Tearlament game where I Ash Blossom to Soliac Search. No. Yeah, they're going to use that to grab the Tier Cache. Having this effect activates, but I also get to use my Prep effect because they did use the Solic effect to search. So that's going to force them to Tearlaments Kashtira now. And let's see here. I'm going to draw the Veiler, right? Veiler is actually a phenomenal top deck because it means I can counter both the Kiklos with the Veiler. And you might have noticed here, I meant to point this out sooner, but... my opponent's been activating a lot of monster effects, and you'll notice I haven't activated Ogre yet, because as soon as I knew they were able to use Tearlament's Grief, I knew they were going to, which means the order of the top cards of their deck is going to change. So I want to Ogre after their deck is no longer being searched, right? And I know I can, again, Veiler the Kiklos here. So I'm going to activate the Ogre now, and then I will Veiler. And by using Ogre now, I get to pretty much manipulate, to some extent, my opponent's mills off the tier cache here. So I wanted to wait for mills. That's why I haven't used Ogre up to this point. Now, looking at the opponent's top 5, Ash Blossom, Foolish, Heartbeat, Maxi, that ends up being fine for the mills anyway, except I misclicked. I meant to click Heartbeat, and I accidentally milled the Foolish instead. This does allow them to add the Soliac back to their hand, which is really not good for me, but it's also not the end of the world either. I'm not, like, super concerned about it. Okay, so they're going to then link off for Cross Sheep. I thought about using the Biru here, but I was like, that's fine. Because I didn't want them to mill 5 with the Kiklos, right? So, setting what I know to be Soliac. Again, I should have just Ogred the Heartbeat, but it was a misclick. So, I'm going to use the Feather Duster now. It's not ideal. I don't love using Feather Duster here, because they can still negate Ogre, and then they're also going to get a search off of the Soliac. But I thought it was better than having to deal with the Soliac negate at an inopportune time, and it's like... they were going to mill 5 off the Kiklos anyway. Okay, here's where I Ash the Soliac. Plus, like I have the Ash for the search here, so... I figured that was probably the best chance I was going to get to use Feather Duster, you know, in this whole game. So they do end up milling the Shiren as well as a Trivikarma, so pretty good mills for them. I'm going to use the Kashtira Preparations effect to summon out Fenrir here. That way Fenrir is on the board when some of these monster effects are resolving. I probably should have done that sooner, actually. But, I mean, to be fair, there's not really anything on the board I would have wanted to have banished now anyway. My opponent did also activate a trap card, so that I do get to use the Kashtira Preparations again, and I'll get to banish that Pearl of Rhino they just added. So, they're going for a Dragostapelia, that's fine. I can definitely play through that. And I get to Ogre as well as Kashtira Prep here. They do get to also use the Cross Sheep, but I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. They're going to bring back, yeah, Ash Blossom, whatever. Who cares? It's also another draw for me, so... Banishing their Pearl of Rhino, now I'm going to use Ogre and look at the top cards of their deck. JK, it's negated. Haha, I totally knew that. But no. I'm going to activate Fenrir here, and they're going to use Dragostapelia to negate. Boom, now we don't have to worry about the negate anymore, and we're good to go at this point. I'm going to use Theosis for the Unicorn. I can use Unicorn to add Birth. My plan is to normal summon Planet Pathfinder, add the field spell, add another Unicorn, normal summon that with the Birth, then I can still summon, I mean, I just have so many different things I can do here, right? I can make a rank 7, and then, yeah, my opponent's just going to concede. So, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty typical game for this deck, right? It's not, even though it is built very similarly to a typical Kashtira deck, we're not necessarily utilizing the same win condition of Era Arise Heart, right? This is very much more of a controlled deck, controlling them not only through all the different hand traps and board breakers we're playing, but also through the Kashtira monsters effects as well. Let's take a look at our next duel here. Okay, so this opponent is going to be on a Branded deck. It's been a hot minute since I've played against Branded, funnily enough. I just have not seen them that much around lately. Okay, let's see what kind of hand traps we can open here. Valor and Ash Blossom. Not bad against Brandon. But I don't even think the Ash Blossom is going to come up on turn 1 here. Opponent's going to normal summon the Blazing Cartesia. We're going to Valor that. I'd rather do this now, even though they can just go for the Granganol on my turn anyway. Just to make sure they're not dumping like a Tragedy and getting some searches, which, spoiler alert, is actually what they were planning on doing. So... Evenly, this is one of those situations where, like, yeah, we got the Evenly, but it's, like, not really that great here, because I'm going to have to summon Unicorn. Like, I'm not going to give up my battle phase here for one back row, right? I don't think that's worth it, so... as predicted, opponent is going into Granganol, and then they're using the Despian Tragedy. I'm actually going to Ash Blossom here. This probably looks really weird. It's like, well, don't you always save Ash Blossom for the Brand Fusion? But if I know they didn't Brand Fusion last turn, and I know they're trying to search into Albert to grab the Brand Fusion, I could just Ash Blossom right now. I'm going to use Unicorn to get the Lubellion. I thought about taking one of the Albions, the Fusion Albions, but it's so hard to you know, feel good about using Unicorn against an Extract monster they have 2 of. I'd rather hit the next most important one of in a situation like this. Get to summon out Ogre again, and I'll get to take the Alibur off the top of their deck, so I know they're going to top deck into Lubellion. Kashtira Ogre, by the way, was very much the MVP of this playtest session. This card is a lot better than you might think it is. Like, the effect... Because the Excavate effect doesn't actually shuffle your opponent's deck, it puts the cards that you look at back in the same order. So that'll give you a lot of information about what your opponent has access to, and you can control and manipulate what their next turn is going to look like as a result. Or their mills in the case of like Tearlaments, right? So I'm going to take the first of the Albions here, as my opponent goes to activate the Branded Fusion. Again, I know they have another one, but... I'm playing for the long game here, and I really want to take one of their Albions on the follow-up turn. So I'm going to use Kashtira Birth's effect here, which is huge. This is a huge swing for me. And this is also, I should have mentioned this before, but this is why I grabbed a Birth instead of Theosis off the Unicorn last turn, right? Because I knew once they activated Brain Diffusion, I would be able to get a lot of their most important cards, including the Brain Diffusion itself. But also by banishing Albaz and Lubellion here with the Kashtira Birth, we have done a few other things as well. For one, Albion's effect to fuse still has to resolve, but with Albaz banished, they're not able to summon anything that would use Albaz as a material, right? Also, by banishing Lubellion, we make sure that they aren't able to send the Albion off of Lubellion, or to the graveyard off of Lubellion's effect, which would not only let them search during the end phase, but also grab a Bestial or branded spell or trap card with the Bestial Lubellion's effect. So, that Kashtira Birth was very, very, very important. I really should have talked about that when I searched it. About how useful it's going to be against our Brand Diffusion. But yeah, definitely want to make sure that we have that up here. So they do get to Coritus and attack drop us, but we're still going to use the Ogre here. These top 5 cards are not like the most impressive. I'm just going to eat their Albaz here. They do get to inflict a lot of damage to me, but it's not lethal. It's 6,500, but that's not 8,000. Also, I should have set evenly, although to be fair here, it would have only eaten the back row, but also to be fair, I would have minded that. Top decking the Scareclaw Cache, but it kind of doesn't matter what I top deck here because I can still pull the Unicorn out of the graveyard with Birth, activate the Theos that I searched off the Unicorn, but I was actually going to use the Branded Retribution here, so yeah, in hindsight, I definitely would have rather have set the evenly and used it right, but definitely not the end of the world or anything. Gonna use my Rise Heart here and special that. Really, the only effect I'm concerned about at this point is the Coritus attack drop, but even then, if anything, that won't be a reason I lose the game, right? It'll just mean I can't win the duel on this turn. But, I mean, I've got so much advantage over my opponent. Again, like I said, this particular iteration of Kashtira plays so much more like a control deck than the regular build, even though it's not built that much differently at all. So here I'm going to make a Big Eye and threaten to steal the Coritus. I'm just going to force them to use it at this point, right? I do actually still have a normal summon here, so even though I can't link away the Coritus, I plan on actually tributing it, funnily enough, to like a normal summon Scareclaw Cache or an Ogre if I can manage to add that back, which I think I'm able to. No, I'm not. I am going to have to tribute it for the Scareclaw Cache, but that's fine. Oh, no, that's right. I am able to tribute it for Ogre, because I banished the Theosis with the Scareclaw Cache and then wheel back Ogre. Oh, and then my opponent just conceded, so I shouldn't have made Shangri-Ira there, to be fair. That was definitely a misplay on my part. I was just kind of like clicking buttons at that point. But, no, the rest of it, yeah, summoning the Ogre was going to be my way of getting rid of the Coritus because Coritus, actually, let me go ahead and read this real quick. I believe it does have to be sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, yes. So if you tribute summon this or use it as a material or whatever, they will not get to summon the Albaz out of their deck. Okay, we have a couple more games to see. Let's take a look at the next one. Alright, we've seen Tearlaments, we've seen Branded, now we're playing against Branded Tearlament. Yeah, no, like I said, just a lot of Tearlament players to bully with this deck apparently today on Ladder. Let's see here, we're going to open with Imperm evenly and Duster, not terrible. Opponent's going to lead with the Lubellion. I figured it was probably Branded at this point when I saw this, of course, but then they activated the Scream, and it's like, alright, now I know exactly what they're on. Opponent's going to Alibur. I'm definitely going to Imperm here. You know, they have Sarnir and 2 other cards in hand, so if they really got really lucky and opened the Brand Diffusion, fine, they can have it, but definitely want to prevent them from searching it if we can. Second, Rise Heart is not a great draw. I'm going to lead with the Duster, even though they have Scream up. I still want to get rid of their face down, which does end up being super poly, so I'm pretty glad I got rid of that. Scream is just going to add a Meta Noise. I don't really care about that. I actually know my opponent's hand is Meta Noise, Sarnir, and 1 unknown card, so I know their hand is actually not even that great here, right? Going to use the Pathfinder for the Raitsoth for Unicorn, Unicorn for the Theosis here, and then my opponent's just going to end up conceding at that point. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't even take that much to really control your opponent down, as you can see here. A lot of controlling your opponent has to do with managing their resources for them, and obviously because they're your opponent and they're trying to beat you, you want to manage them in a poor way. That means, as I was doing during that game, keeping track of what your opponent is searching and adding and all that fun stuff, and that will very much help you decide whether a disruption is worth using or not, which again is very important in a control deck. Ideally, you would grind them down to like nothing in hand, right, like 0 cards whatsoever, but again, if we're in a situation like this where like I know they have 3 cards in hand and 1 is Meta Noise and 1 is Bestial Sarnir, and the third is, even if I don't know what it is, I know it's a card that doesn't advance their board state because they didn't use it to advance their board state last turn. So like, even though they have 3 cards here, they're effectively still going to be in top deck mode going into my turn. And I mean, yeah, as we can see here, I was able to set up a lot of Kashtira plays going into a board state like that, which is very good for me. I think we have one more game to look at. Let's go ahead and see that here. Wow, it's actually another tier limit deck. Oh my god, we just bullied every tier limit player on ladder today with this deck, didn't we? Yeah, but I mean, again, it's a good matchup for me. I'll definitely take it. I wanted to play against Snake Eye. I didn't run into any Snake Eye, but I am at Master 5, so it kind of makes sense, right? At the lower ranks of any given, you know, tier on the ranked ladder, your opponents are probably going to be, like, if you're in Master 5 or Diamond 5 or Plat 5, your opponents are probably going to be on more fun decks because they can't drop ranks, or at the very least, not going to be trying as hard as they possibly can. So that makes sense why we didn't see any Snake Eye here. Yeah, funnily enough, I've just not had that much time to play ranked ladder this season, so I'm still... I actually only just got to Master 5 yesterday, which at the time of recording this would be the 25th. So, just between, like, IRL stuff and also the tournaments I've been playing in this month, it's been a very, very busy month for me, so... but I definitely want to make sure that I got to Master at some point. Not try to go back down to Plat. No. No. So... yeah, they're just doing hashtag just tier limit things here. In a lot of ways, it's kind of interesting because it's the game we had the least amount of direct disruption for, but this is a game where evenly is really going to shine. Yeah, you just go to battle phase, go evenly. They're going to flip up Solic, which is fine, that doesn't do anything. Actually, I wasn't sure what they were going to keep here, and it ends up being Kickless, which does make sense. I think this is another game where they just, yeah, concede as soon as I activate Reedsoft, so... yeah, another pretty short duel, but it also shows, again, that it doesn't take too much to control an opponent down. You know, as much flack as I do give evenly, it did just, like, single-handedly win us the game here. And that is something that can happen quite a bit. It's why I have evenly in this deck, right? Like, I know probably from the deck profile and the way I talked about it, it sounded like I wasn't that big a fan of evenly. I think it's good in a going second deck like this, but I don't even think every going second deck needs it, and I definitely don't think that regular builds should be playing it pretty much at all, except for maybe some certain archetypes. But again, you'd still want to be going second in those situations, so, like, you know. Anyway, I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. Let's move now to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for support there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details again will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description linked below is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.